One moment you're sitting in a courtroom expecting a routine hearing, and the next moment the entire room goes silent because someone just snapped. Not the judge, not the lawyers, but the one person nobody thought would speak up. And what she said about King Harris and his famous father T.I.? Let's just say, it turned a simple court appearance into a full-blown family spectacle, because according to multiple reports swirling online, King Harris' girlfriend didn't just show up to support him. Oh no, she allegedly stood up in court and started airing out everything. The arguments, the pressure, the family drama, and yes, even the part about how the Harris family image might not be as perfect as it looks on social media. Now, if you've been following the saga of the Harris family, you already know things have been messy for a while. From public arguments to viral incidents and endless internet debates, the name Harris has been trending for reasons that have nothing to do with music. But what allegedly happened inside that courtroom? That might be the most explosive chapter yet. So what exactly did she say? Why were people in the courtroom reportedly stunned? And did she really call out both King and T.I. in front of everyone? Because if even half of these reports are true, this story just went from messy to absolutely nuclear. The hearing was supposed to be routine, quiet, predictable. Another short appearance connected to the long list of legal headaches surrounding King Harris, the son of hip-hop heavyweight T.I. and reality television personality Tiny Harris. No cameras inside, no dramatic speeches, just paperwork, lawyers speaking in calm voices, and the judge deciding what happens next. But according to people who claim they were inside that courtroom, the atmosphere changed in a matter of seconds, because right in the middle of the hearing, King Harris' girlfriend allegedly stood up and started talking, not whispering to a lawyer, not asking a question, talking loudly enough that everyone in the room turned their heads. And the moment she started speaking, people realized this wasn't going to be a normal court day. Now, to understand why this moment exploded the way it did, you have to understand the situation King Harris walked into that courtroom with. His name had already been bouncing around headlines for months. First, there was the traffic stop that turned into an arrest, after police discovered an outstanding warrant connected to earlier driving charges. Then the body cam footage hit the internet, and suddenly the entire situation became viral content. People online had opinions about everything. The car, the firearm on his hip, the smell officers said they noticed, the calm way he was handcuffed, the fact that he was the son of one of the most famous rappers to ever come out of Atlanta. But the arrest was only one chapter in a much longer story. For years, critics had been arguing about the image King Harris was trying to project. Some people saw him as a young artist trying to step out of the shadow of his famous father. Others saw something completely different. They saw a wealthy celebrity kid trying to convince the world he had lived a life of street struggle, and that debate had already exploded online more than once. There was the viral argument during a football game where King went live on social media and started talking about how he grew up. He insisted he hadn't been raised with a silver spoon. His parents disagreed loudly in real time. The conversation turned heated, then uncomfortable, then borderline chaotic as the entire internet watched the family argue about their own history. There were other moments too. Videos circulating online showing confrontations in public places, arguments with employees, heated exchanges with critics, each clip adding another layer to the public perception that something inside the Harris family dynamic wasn't exactly smooth. So when King Harris walked into court that day, he wasn't just a young man dealing with legal trouble. He was a viral personality surrounded by controversy, and sitting just a few rows behind him was his girlfriend. At first she appeared quiet. Observers say she looked nervous but composed. She spoke occasionally with one of the attorneys. She checked her phone. Nothing about her behavior suggested she was about to become the center of the entire hearing. Then the conversation between lawyers and the judge shifted toward King's past incidents. Not just the traffic case, but the broader pattern that prosecutors were hinting at. Questions about responsibility. Questions about maturity. Questions about whether the young Man in front of them understood the seriousness of his situation. That's when things reportedly started to unravel, because, according to several people who later discussed the hearing online, King Harris' girlfriend suddenly interrupted the discussion. At first the interruption sounded small. Just a sentence spoken a little too loudly from the gallery seating, but the sentence included King's name. And then it included his father's name, and suddenly everyone in the room realized she wasn't whispering. She was addressing the situation directly. One witness later described the moment like this: the room had that stiff courtroom silence where everyone is listening carefully to every word. Then, out of nowhere, she started saying things that sounded less like a legal statement and more like a personal confession, some people claim. She said King was under enormous pressure to live up to the Harris name. Others say she accused the environment around him of encouraging reckless behavior. One person even claimed she suggested that the family's public image didn't always match what life looked like behind closed doors. Now keep in mind, none of this was part of the official hearing. No lawyer had called her to testify. No one had asked her to speak, which is exactly why the moment turned into chaos. The judge reportedly paused the proceedings immediately. Lawyers began whispering to each other. A court officer stepped closer to the seating area where she was standing, but by that point the words had already been spoken, and once words like that enter a courtroom, they tend to travel fast. Within hours, people online were already trying to piece together what happened. Clips from outside the courthouse started circulating. Social media posts claiming inside knowledge began appearing. Anonymous accounts insisted the girlfriend had exposed everything. Of course, the internet being the internet, every version of the story sounded slightly different. Some said she accused King of ignoring advice and getting caught up in attention. Others claimed she criticized the influence of fame and money surrounding him. A few dramatic posts even claimed she pointed directly at the Harris family legacy and suggested it was part of the problem, whether every detail of those claims is accurate or not. One thing became clear very quickly. The moment had turned a routine hearing into viral drama. And as the rumors spread, people started revisiting every previous controversy connected to King Harris. They remembered the arguments, the viral clips, the public tension between father and son, the endless debates about privilege and authenticity. Suddenly, the girlfriend's outburst wasn't just about one court hearing. It was about the entire narrative surrounding the Harris family, and that narrative has always been complicated. On one side, you have T.I., a rapper who built his career telling stories about struggle, survival, and redemption. On the other side, you have a son growing up in wealth and fame while trying to build his own identity. Some fans sympathize with King. They say growing up under that kind of spotlight would mess with anyone's sense of direction. Other critics aren't so forgiving. They argue that privilege comes with responsibility, and that repeated controversies suggest deeper issues. So when the girlfriend allegedly started speaking inside that courtroom, people didn't hear just one voice. They heard a potential glimpse into the pressure cooker. That is, life inside a celebrity family. The hearing eventually continued. Court officials reportedly restored order. Lawyers returned to discussing legal details. But by that point, the damage, or depending on your perspective, the revelation had already occurred, because once something dramatic happens in a courtroom connected to a famous family, the outside world doesn't forget, the story grows, speculation multiplies, and every person involved suddenly finds themselves under a brighter spotlight than before. By the end of that day, King Harris wasn't just dealing with legal questions, he was dealing with a brand new wave of public curiosity. People wanted to know what exactly his girlfriend said. They wanted to know whether her comments would affect the case. They wanted to know how T.I. would react to hearing that his own name had reportedly been mentioned during the outburst, and perhaps most importantly, they wanted to know whether the incident was a moment of emotional frustration or the beginning of a much bigger public confrontation. Because if there's one thing the internet loves more than celebrity drama, it's the moment when private family tensions spill into the open. And as the courthouse emptied and rumors spread across social media. One question started echoing louder than all the rest. If this was only the beginning of what she had to say, what else might still be coming next? To be continued. What made the situation even more intense was what started happening outside the courtroom after that moment. Because once the hearing paused and the tension settled, people who were present began quietly talking. Not to reporters directly, not on official records, but through the modern pipeline where almost every viral story is born now: social media posts, private group chats, and anonymous accounts claiming they had inside information. Within a few hours, the internet had already created 3 different versions of the same story. In one version, King Harris' girlfriend allegedly spoke out because she was frustrated watching the entire legal situation unfold, while no one addressed what she believed was the real issue. According to this narrative, she wasn't trying to cause a scene. She simply felt like the conversation inside the courtroom ignored the bigger picture. In another version spreading online, people claim the outburst happened when prosecutors began referencing the pattern of controversies surrounding King Harris. That included the previous arrests, the public confrontations, and the viral incidents that had already turned him into a lightning rod for internet criticism. And according to those rumors, hearing all of that laid out in such a cold legal tone pushed her over the edge. But the most dramatic version, the one that really grabbed the internet's attention, suggested she specifically mentioned the influence of King's environment, the pressure of growing up in a celebrity family, the expectations that come with having a father like T.I. Now, again, no official transcript confirms every one of these claims, but the story exploded because the idea itself was believable to people who had been watching the Harris family drama unfold for years, because the tension between King and his father hasn't exactly been a secret. Fans remember the public argument that happened during that football game livestream months earlier. A moment where a simple conversation about upbringing turned into a heated debate broadcast directly to thousands of viewers. King insisted he understood struggle. His parents insisted he didn't, and the argument quickly turned into one of those painfully awkward family moments that the internet never forgets. People clipped it, shared it, analyzed every sentence. For many viewers, it was the first time they saw a crack in the carefully curated image of the Harris family. So, when rumors started spreading that the girlfriend had brought up family pressure in court, the internet immediately connected the dots. Suddenly everyone had theories. Some people argued she was defending King. They claimed she was trying to explain that the constant spotlight and public criticism were pushing him into situations where every mistake turned into national headlines. Others saw it very differently. They argued the alleged comments sounded more like frustration, like someone close to the situation finally voicing the things people around the Harris family had been thinking privately for years. And then there were the armchair investigators who began digging into every detail of the relationship itself. Who is she exactly? How long have they been together? Was she present during previous controversies? Had she ever spoken publicly before? Within hours, entire threads appeared breaking down old photos, social media interactions, and past live stream appearances, trying to piece together the timeline of their relationship, because that's the way modern celebrity drama works now. The moment something unexpected happens, the internet doesn't just watch. It investigates. Meanwhile, inside the legal process, things reportedly became more complicated. Not because the girlfriend's outburst directly changed the charges, but because any unexpected disruption in a courtroom tends to make judges and attorneys extra cautious about how the proceedings move forward. According to people discussing the case online, the judge reminded everyone that courtroom protocol exists for a reason. Emotional statements from the gallery aren't evidence. They aren't testimony. And they definitely aren't supposed to interrupt legal arguments, but the ripple effect had already begun, because while the court might have returned to business, the outside world had already turned the moment into a full-blown narrative, and that narrative started expanding into other areas of the Harris family's public history, critics, quickly revisited the earlier incidents that had kept King Harris trending long before this court date ever happened. They talked again about the restaurant confrontation that went viral when he was younger, the arguments with critics online, the endless debates about whether he was trying to portray a lifestyle that didn't match the reality of growing up in a wealthy household. Some commentators even started comparing the situation to the early life story of his father, because the truth is, T.I. built much of his reputation on surviving real hardship before becoming one of the biggest names in hip-hop. His story involved street struggles, legal battles, and eventually a transformation into a mainstream superstar. But King Harris was born into a completely different world. Luxury homes, television shows, industry, connections, fame from the moment he was old enough to appear in family reality programs. For years, critics have questioned how someone growing up in that environment could convincingly claim the same type of street experience. And every time King Harris responded to those criticisms, the debate only got louder. So when his girlfriend allegedly spoke up during the hearing, many people interpreted it as the latest chapter in that ongoing identity struggle. Was she defending him from unfair judgment? Or was she accidentally confirming that the tension surrounding his lifestyle choices was real? That question became the centerpiece of online discussions for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, reporters began trying to get reactions from the Harris family itself. No official statement appeared immediately, and that silence only fueled the speculation, because if there's one thing the internet interprets as confirmation, it's silence. Commentators started asking how T.I. might feel hearing that his name had allegedly come up during a courtroom outburst connected to his son's legal troubles. Would he address it publicly? Would he dismiss it as internet exaggeration? Or would he respond the way he often does, with humor, sarcasm, and a reminder that family disagreements happen everywhere, even if most families don't have millions of people watching? But perhaps the most interesting reaction came from fans themselves. Some defended King Harris fiercely. They argued that young people make mistakes, and that being born into fame doesn't magically grant perfect judgment. Others were less sympathetic. They pointed out that every new controversy seemed to follow a familiar pattern: public drama, viral clips, heated arguments, then a temporary quiet period before another incident restarted the cycle. And now the courtroom moment had added another layer to that cycle. Because whether the girlfriend intended it or not, her alleged comments had shifted the conversation. The focus was no longer just on the legal case. Now people were talking about the environment surrounding King Harris, the family dynamics, the pressure of legacy. The expectations of growing up as the son of a rap legend. And the possibility that all those factors combined were creating a situation where every personal issue eventually spilled into public view. By the time evening arrived, the story had evolved into something much bigger than a single outburst. It had become a cultural debate about celebrity parenting, identity, and the complicated reality of growing up in front of an audience that never stops watching. And while the courtroom drama might have ended for the day, the conversation around it was only getting started. Because if the girlfriend had already said that much inside a courthouse, people couldn't help wondering what might happen if she decided to say even more outside of it. Because by the next morning, the situation surrounding King Harris had officially crossed the line from legal update into full-blown internet spectacle. Comment sections were exploding. Reaction channels were posting breakdown videos. Blogs were quoting anonymous sources close to the situation, and every version of the story seemed to get a little more dramatic than the last. Some posts claimed the girlfriend had been holding in frustration for months. According to those rumors, the pressure surrounding King's public image had been building behind the scenes for a long time. The constant criticism online, the comparisons to his father, the endless debates about whether he was trying to live up to an image that didn't belong to him. Other rumors painted a different picture. Entirely, those versions suggested the tension was coming from inside the relationship itself. The argument was that living inside the orbit of a famous family like the Harrises isn't easy. Cameras, fans, critics, every small disagreement suddenly becomes public gossip. And when someone who isn't used to that spotlight suddenly finds themselves sitting inside a courtroom connected to national headlines, emotions can spill over. Whether either of those explanations is true remains unclear, but the speculation alone was enough to keep the conversation trending. Meanwhile, the name of T.I. kept coming up in every discussion, and that part of the story made things even more complicated. Because T.I. isn't just a celebrity, father watching his son deal with legal trouble. He's a public figure with his own long history of controversy, redemption, and media scrutiny. Over the years, he has spoken openly about his past mistakes and the lessons he learned from them. He has also talked many times about trying to guide his children away from repeating those same paths, which is why critics immediately started asking the uncomfortable question: if T.I. already lived through the legal system himself, why does his son keep ending up in similar situations? Supporters of the Harris family quickly pushed back against that narrative. They pointed out that the situations aren't identical. They argued that people were exaggerating the seriousness of the charges just to create drama. And they reminded everyone that King Harris is still young and figuring out his own life. But critics weren't satisfied with that explanation. They argued that the pattern of public incidents couldn't simply be dismissed as normal mistakes. From viral arguments to arrests to public confrontations, the list of controversies had grown long enough that people began asking whether something deeper was happening inside the Harris family dynamic. That's where the girlfriend's courtroom moment became so significant. Because even though her alleged comments weren't part of the official legal proceedings, they introduced a new element into the conversation: the idea that someone close to King Harris might be questioning the environment around him. And once that idea entered the public narrative, it spread fast. Some commentators started wondering whether this incident could push the Harris family to handle things differently behind the scenes. After all, every family eventually reaches a point where private issues can no longer stay private. Others predicted the opposite. They believed the family would close ranks and treat the entire incident as another exaggerated internet rumor. History suggests that second scenario might be more likely. The Harris family has faced public scrutiny before: reality television, music controversies, online criticism. None of it is new territory for them. And in many previous situations, they have responded the same way, by reminding people that outsiders only see fragments of their lives. Still, this particular moment feels different to some observers, not because of the legal charges themselves, but because of how the story unfolded. Courtrooms are supposed to be controlled. Environments, structured, formal, emotional outbursts are rare. And when they happen, they tend to stick in people's memories, which means even if the legal case eventually fades from the headlines, the image of a girlfriend standing up and allegedly calling out both King Harris and his famous father will probably continue circulating online. And that leads to the next question. Everyone is asking, what happens now? Legally, the process will continue the way legal processes always do. Lawyers will argue motions. Judges will review details. The case will move through the system step by step, but the legal outcome might not be the most important part of this story anymore. Because the real consequences could be happening in the court of public opinion. Every time a celebrity family faces controversy, the internet starts forming narratives: heroes and villains, victims and villains, supporters and critics. And once those narratives take hold, they can shape how every future incident is interpreted. If King Harris gets into another public argument, people will remember this courtroom moment. If he releases music addressing his critics, listeners will connect the lyrics back to the family tension people believe exists, even Something as simple as a social media post can suddenly become evidence in the ongoing debate about his life. That's the strange reality of growing up in the digital age, especially when your last name already carries massive cultural weight for better or worse. King Harris is living under a microscope. Every action analyzed, every reaction debated, every rumor magnified, and now this courtroom episode added yet another chapter to a story that already feels like a reality show unfolding in real time. Of course, the truth behind the moment may end up being far less dramatic than the internet imagines. Maybe the girlfriend was simply overwhelmed. Maybe the comments were shorter than people claim. Maybe the entire situation was blown out of proportion by a few viral posts that spread faster than the facts. That happens all the time in the modern media landscape, but the perception of drama is often just as powerful as the drama itself. And right now, the perception surrounding the Harris family is louder than ever, which brings us back to the moment that started this entire story. A courtroom, a quiet hearing, a young man facing legal questions, and then suddenly a voice from the gallery. People say changed the entire atmosphere of the room. Whether that voice was defending King Harris or exposing deeper frustrations might depend on who you ask, but one thing is certain: the internet heard about it, and once the internet hears something like that, the story doesn't disappear, it evolves, it spreads, and it keeps people watching to see what happens next. So now the question everyone is asking is simple: what really happened in that courtroom, and how much of what we're hearing is the full truth? Because when it comes to the ongoing drama surrounding King Harris and the Harris family, the line between rumor, frustration, and reality seems to get blurrier every single time a new story hits the internet. Was this just an emotional moment from someone who felt overwhelmed watching everything unfold? Or was it a glimpse into the kind of pressure that comes with being connected to a famous name like T.I.? And if the rumors about what was said in that courtroom are even partially true, does this mean the tension surrounding King's life is bigger than what fans have been seeing online? At the end of the day, situations like this always leave more questions than answers. But one thing is certain: the spotlight on the Harris family isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So what do you think really happened here? Was the girlfriend out of line, or was she saying what nobody else wanted to say? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is far from over. And if you want more breakdowns of the biggest celebrity drama stories making headlines right now, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next one.